Hello there, I'm Michele. I'm a licensed massage therapist in Washington State, and I bring you MBLEx study resources, videos here on YouTube, and also on my website. I got lots of stuff. There's a link in the description below that will take you to all the free stuff I've got. Courses, ebooks, practice tests, study guides to help guide you in passing the massage and bodywork licensing exam with calm and confidence. I've been going through a series here, creating this. It's going to be a course. It's going to be available on my website. But in the meantime, I'm just posting every video that I've been recording so that you guys have access to this information as soon as possible. So I'm going through the anatomy and physiology that you need to know for the MBLEx. In today's video, we're going to be talking about sensory receptors and dermatomes. So going from membranes to the integumentary system, the sensory receptors and the dermatomes that live inside of the integumentary system. Okay, that's the skin, in case you didn't know, in case you're just tuning in here for the first time. I'm assuming that all of you that are studying for the massage and bodywork licensing exam have already taken anatomy and physiology in school, in your massage school. So you already have that basis, but you just need a reminder of exactly what you need to know. For me, it was confusing because I also went to school and as a pre-med, so I learned a lot more than I actually needed to know to pass the massage and bodywork licensing exam. But it had been long enough that it all turned into like this churned up smoothie in my mind, and I couldn't remember what was what. And I was like, I don't remember all the details of the biochemical chain reaction that happens inside of a mitochondria. And my massage instructor was like, you don't need to know that for the MBLEx. So this is what I want to convey to you guys. It's like, don't fuss over it. Listen to the information that I'm giving to you now. Absorb it. Remember your medical terminology. There's an ebook about that on my website. And, stick around for the MBLEx style questions at the end, and you're going to be in really good shape for passing the MBLEx. So in this video, just a quick overview. I'm going to introduce the cutaneous receptors. Cutaneous is the skin, right? Cutaneous receptors and dermatomes. Why that's important. Receptor types. That's tactile receptors, temperature receptors, and pain receptors. And the dermatomes, and I'm going to show maps of the dermatomes and describe how they work. And then we'll do 4 MBLEx style questions at the end to help dial in the information that we went through, and also to prepare you for the kinds of questions that you're going to be getting on the MBLEx. So without any further ado, I'm switching to slideshow mode, and you're not going to see me for the rest of the video, and I will see you in there. Okay, we're going to be talking about sensory receptors and dermatomes. That's in the integumentary system. So the skin is more than a protective covering. It's a living sensory organ that constantly communicates with the nervous system. Within the layers of the skin are cutaneous sensory receptors. Cutaneous is referring to the kind of membrane that covers our whole body. So remember that whenever we're talking about cutaneous, we're talking about the skin. The sensory receptors are specialized nerve endings that detect touch, pressure, pain, temperature, and vibration, allowing the body to interpret and respond to the surrounding environment. The sensory signals are mapped across the body in regions called dermatomes, which correspond to specific spinal nerves, and we're going to talk about that through this video. Why is it important for us to know these sensory receptors and dermatomes? Because it helps us to recognize how touch influences the nervous system, supports healing, and contributes to overall body awareness. Body awareness is a very important part of the therapeutic process for body workers and massage therapists. Okay, so most of the sensory receptors live in the dermis, and there are a couple that live in the hypodermis. None of the sensory receptors live in the epidermis. You want to know about all of these layers in more detail? Check out the last video that I created, Unit 6, is the integumentary system. That's what where I talk about some of the details of the skin layers. But for right now, we're just talking about the sensory receptors, so we're going to stick with that. So this layer right here, this blue layer, is called the papillary layer of the dermis. So this is cutaneous, or sorry, not cutaneous. This is connective tissue here, and this is epithelial tissue. This connective tissue ends at this spot, at this layer, okay? And we have 3 different sets of sensory receptors that live in that area. So we have the free nerve endings. So this is just a regular old nerve, and it's just hanging out, and it's got its little pokies here, feeling for anything that's happening so it can report it to your brain. And then we have the Merkel discs, which kind of look like nerve endings as well, but they have little disc-shaped sensors on the end. We're going to go into more detail about each of these in this video. And then we have Meissner's corpuscles. Here's an example of Meissner's corpuscles, and they're also sticking into the papillary region right here, the papillary membrane, I suppose, but it's just a region. And then you can see the nerve going back to report to the brain. So these little Q-tip heads here are where the sensing happens. Now going deeper, we've got a few other things. We've got the hair root plexi. So you see the hair follicle here. There's a nerve that wraps around the hair follicle, and it sends information from when this vibrates, when the hair shaft gets bumped or blown, it sends a message to the brain to say something's going on. So the sensation is happening. And then we have, on a deeper level, we have the Pacinian corpuscles, and then we have the Ruffini's corpuscles. I'm going to talk about what corpuscles mean and what each of these names are in just a minute. So those two, Pacinian and Ruffini, they live in the hypodermis more than they live in the dermis. So we're going to talk in detail about each of these. All right. So first of all, let's talk about those free nerve endings that I described that are kind of, the ends are kind of sticking into the papillary region of the cutaneous membrane. It's sensitive to superficial stimulus. So like any kind of light touch, it can feel. So itching, tickling, it can feel sustained pressure. So like if you just put pressure on just for a minute, it's like, but then if you hold the pressure, then those free nerve endings are sending the constant message that something is, like the deeper pressure, or the sustained pressure, not deeper pressure, but sustained pressure is happening. And it also, free nerve endings can sense temperature. It can sense hot. There's certain nerve endings that can just sense the heat, and there are certain nerve endings that can just sense the cold. They're different, separate nerve endings. And then we have nociceptors, which is a kind of nerve ending that is specialized to sense the pain, to send the message of pain to your brain. When a cell is damaged, it sends out chemicals that it's like an alarm system gets tripped when a cell gets damaged somehow by injuring yourself in some way, let's say, and the nociceptor senses it and sends the message. Now, there are 2 different kinds of nociceptors. There are nociceptors for acute pain, and there are nociceptors for chronic pain. And the acute pain are more prone to sense the chemicals from any kind of damage that's happening to the cells, any kind of injury that's happening. Whereas the chronic pain nociceptors are more sensing like a chemical imbalance of some kind. So they work differently. And just to get this out here so you know, just in case you get asked in the MBLEx, free nerve endings are the most numerous and widespread of all of the sensory receptors. So we have all these other sensory receptors, but you're going to find free nerve endings the most. Not necessarily nociceptors. Nociceptors, there's a lot of those too. But just generally, free nerve endings are the most numerous in the body. And then, in that picture, that was a nerve. Those are the nerve endings. This is the neuron, and those are the endings for it. Okay, so corpuscles. I wanted to explain what those are real quick. I have that up here. What is a corpuscle? Corp means body, corp and corpuscles. And then uscles is a derivative of culus, which means diminutive or small. Okay, so little body. It's a little body. Does it make sense? I don't know. Merkel discs, which live close to that papillary region, more superficial, more sensitive to lighter touch. It's also a kind of nerve ending, but it has a special disc on it that senses things in a different way. It senses that sustained, steady pressure and light touch. But what's special about Merkel discs is it's highly concentrated in the fingertips, in the lips, and the genitalia. And that is why those regions are more sensitive than other regions of our bodies. It hurts more when we injure our fingers than it does if we injure our elbow. The skin on our fingers than it does when. That's why it hurts when we cut our finger. You're not a weenie. Okay? They're also known as tactile discs. So watch out for that terminology on the MBLEx. Meissner's corpuscles. So we talked about what corpuscles are. Meissner was the researcher, this was in the 1800s, that speculated what these are. And so they named them after him. So they're shaped like the end of a cotton swab, and a bundle of them are attached to a nerve, and they sense light vibration and light touch. And just like the Merkel discs, they're highly concentrated in the fingertips, lips, and genitalia. So those highly sensitive areas, we have Meissner's corpuscles and we have Merkel discs. So you know, they do light touch, vibration, steady pressure. And then on the deeper level, remember we were talking about in the hypodermis, also in the dermis, but they hang out closer to the hypodermis, so deeper in. So these are deeper pressure sensors. We have the Pacinian corpuscle, Pacinian referring to Dr. Pacini, an Italian anatomist, biologist that speculated about these guys. This guy's really close to this one, so I hope they're not confusing here. But it's like an egg-shaped doohickey that's got these like sensors that go inside, like circular sensors. And yeah, found in hypodermis more often throughout the body, and it's also around joints and tendons, and it senses deep pressure and high frequency vibrations. So if you just touch somebody, it's not setting off the Pacinian or Pacinian corpuscles. You have to press deeper to trigger those. And the same thing for Ruffini's corpuscles, but they're shaped differently. There's like horizontal platforms for sensing touch, pressure, and the thing that's different about these is that they sense like a stretching or tissue distortion. So if you're like pulling the skin or you're like stretching it in any way, those are the receptors that tell you that you're pulling the skin. Like somebody's giving you a what do they call those, rug burns, where you like twist the skin with your hands moving in opposite directions. That thing the kids did on the playground back in the day. I don't know, maybe they're still doing it. That would be a Ruffini's corpuscle that's telling you that that's happening. Don't do it. And then the last sensory receptor would be the hair root plexus that I talked about. It's a nerve that wraps around the follicle to tell us when there's hair movement or movement in the hair shaft. So it's kind of deep, but its actual sensor is up above the epidermis. So I've gone through and separated all of these different sensory receptors according to what they do to help dial this in. And I also included a really adorable picture of a kitty, because who doesn't love kitties, right? If you're stroking that little kitty very gently with your finger, then it's going to be a light touch. So it would be like a Meissner's corpuscle or a Merkel disc would sense that very light touch. Now, Ruffini's corpuscle is a deeper touch, and the hair root plexi is if you're touching them with like a, just very, very gently with the hair on the back of your arm. For vibration, like say for example, you pick up a speaker and you can feel the vibration of the speaker making music in your hand. That's the kind of thing that we're referring to. Or if you're sitting in a vehicle and it's rattling as you're going down the road. So Meissner's corpuscles would be a big one that does that. And on a deeper level, a deep vibration would be the Pacinian corpuscle. For itching and tickling, those skin sensory stuff, that would be the free nerve endings. And then for pressure, it would be Ruffini's corpuscles, Pacinian corpuscles, and Merkel discs all sense pressure. And then for temperature changes, we've got the free nerve endings, and for both, but they're just different ones for each one. And then for pain, also known as nociception, nociceptors and different nociceptors for the different kinds of pain. Okay, so now we're moving on to talk about dermatomes, which are the regions that are associated with specific nerve endings coming out of the spine. So let's go ahead and start this over again. Here's where a nerve is sensing something. This could be any of those nerves that I just spoke of. It could be the free nerve ending or the Pacinian corpuscle. I just drew a free nerve ending. So here it is sensing something. And the information goes up the nerve and it goes to the nerve root where it comes out of the spine from the spinal root that comes down this way. Ooh. So yeah, information from the brain goes down the spine and the root comes out from these discs and it goes down and it goes to your skin. Now, if there is a region in the body that your client has that has a loss of sensation or some kind of numbness, and it's just one spot, then you can look at the chart that I have on the next page and you can figure out if somebody's got a pinched vertebrae, whether the disc is pinched and the nerve is being impinged, or if there's a muscle that's impinging the nerve along the way, or if there's been some kind of damage to the nerve. You can associate a specific nerve with the sensation that the person has on their skin. So that is a pretty cool thing to know. And so here's a map of all the different dermatomes. Okay. So if somebody has numbness or tingling in their hand, not in their arm, but in their hand, then you know that it could be an impingement in the cervical vertebrae or the nerve going to the cervical vertebrae. So that's the association. Same thing with a numb, tingling spot on their back. That's associated with the thoracic region. And if somebody has discomfort in their knee, it could be, or the skin of their knee, then it can be going to the L1 through L5. That's the lumbar vertebrae. And then for the sacral vertebrae, the region that it innervates or gets information from would be the lower glute and the genitals, posterior legs, all this green area, and the lateral foot. The feet are the feet cut off here? They're just not showing because of my dashboard here, but it goes around kind of to the front and the lateral part. So the low back and the top of the glutes all the way around to the anterior part of the leg is all connected with the lumbar nerve roots, and then the backside and the legs to the outside of the outside of the feet is all associated with the sacral. And then here's something interesting, that the anterior aspect of the arms are associated with the thoracic vertebrae. Okay, so that's all the information that is going to be happening in this video. We're just going to continue learning through some MBLEx style questions. Need a drink of water. Okay, let's get started. During a discussion on sensory reception, a massage student asks which receptors are found closer to the skin surface versus deeper within the dermis and subcutaneous tissue. Which of the following correctly identifies these locations? Okay. Sensory reception, which receptors are found closer to the skin surface versus deeper? Okay. Which of the sensory receptors are in the papillary region? Essentially, that's what they're asking. Can you remember which sensory receptors were closer to the top? I remember nerve endings. I remember Merkel discs, which is another kind of nerve ending. And I remember the Meissner's corpuscles, which are like the little Q-tippy bundles. Okay. Me and my typos. I am just I cannot see my typos until either somebody points them out, which I appreciate it when you guys do, or like if I'm in the middle of a slideshow, I'm like, okay. A, Meissner's corpuscles and Merkel discs are in the papillary region, while Pacinian and Ruffini's corpuscles are found deeper in the dermis and subcutaneous tissue. This A is a correct statement. Okay, so let's move on and see if there is anything else that would fit better, just to make sure. Pacinian and Meissner's corpuscles are both located in the papillary region. Not correct. Pacinian corpuscles are closer to the hypodermis. C. Merkel discs and Ruffini's corpuscles are found only in the hypodermis. Not true. Merkel discs are in the papillary region. And then finally, D. Free nerve endings are confined to deep connective tissue, while Pacinian corpuscles are superficial. That's not correct. So it has to be A. Okay, and then there's also the explanation. If you want to go through and read this, you can download the PDF for all of these slideshows that's available in the link in the description, or also if you're watching this in the course on my website, then you'll find it attached to this unit. Okay, which type of sensory receptor is most directly responsible for detecting painful stimuli such as tissue injury or extreme heat? Okay, sensory receptor most directly responsible detecting painful stimuli. Do we remember what the pain receptors were? Were they Merkel discs, nociceptors, Ruffini's corpuscles, or Pacinian corpuscles? I remember nociceptors. Okay. Merkel discs detect sustained pressure. Ruffini's corpuscles detect skin stretch, and Pacinian corpuscles respond to vibration and deep pressure. A client reports feeling deep vibration during percussive massage techniques. Which receptor type is primarily responsible for sensing this stimulus? Deep. Remember, we're talking about deep. So which one of these is a deep one? Is a deep vibration. I'm just going to go down to the bottom and say hair root plexus is not for vibration. It's like a whisker. Hair root plexus it's attached around the hair follicle, so it senses things like a whisker. So it senses things happening to the hairs. Merkel disc and Meissner's corpuscles are both in the papillary region. They're not deep. They are superficial sensors. So it has to be the Pacinian corpuscle. Yay! All right. And one more question. In relation to dermatomes, which of the following statements is most accurate? All right, we're talking about dermatomes here. Remember, those are regions that have innervation. Most accurate about dermatomes. So let's go through and read these statements. Dermatomes are regions of skin supplied by a single cranial nerve. I don't even understand that question. Regions of skin supplied by a single cranial nerve? Well, the cranial nerves come out of the cervical area, and whereas dermatomes that cover all of the nerves coming out of the whole spine. So it's not the best. It's not the most accurate. The pattern of dermatomes is random and unique to each individual. Not true. They're the same with everyone. C. Dermatomes are sensory regions controlled by groups of peripheral nerves. No. A peripheral nerve is a nerve that is coming out of, let me see. Gotta remember. I can't remember what peripheral nerves are. We are definitely going to be learning about that in the nervous system segment. Peripheral nerves are nerves that extend outside of the central nervous system, yes. Outside of the brain and spinal cord. Okay, so not C. It has to be D, I guess. Each dermatome corresponds to the distribution of a specific spinal nerve. There we go. All right. They're mapped areas of skin innervated by sensory fibers from a single spinal nerve root. So a message hits that sensory receptor and it goes up to that nerve, to the spinal cord. Excuse me, I had a hiccup. And so if there's an interruption in that signal, that means that there could be something going on at the spinal level, or it could be compressing the nerve somewhere along the way. So we know where to start looking. And that rounds out this section. What's coming up next? We're going to be talking about the skeletal system, I believe. Framework and movement, moving on to the skeletal system from here. So make sure that you are subscribed so you can catch the next unit in my Anatomy and Physiology series. And I will see you then. Toodaloo.